Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Alonso and I'm writing my first fantasy novel. Now this video is part of a series where I talk about my world, but later on I'm also going to be talking about the story itself, the craft of writing and other things like that. So if that's something that interests you, please stick around. However, for this specific video, I highly suggest that you guys go check out the first video. I'll leave a link to my playlist somewhere in the screen here, at the end of the video, and in the description. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks, and I'm sorry for that, but there was a lot going on in my life. It started with the holiday season, you know, like Christmas and all that stuff. Just, you know, there was like a lot of movement and I didn't really have much time to record a video. I did write, but I didn't have enough time to actually sit down and make a video. And very quickly after the holidays, I started working a new job as a realtor of all things. But it's interesting for sure, but I am kind of seeing this job a little bit as a means to an end, because in the end, I definitely do want to be able to make novels as a living. But anyway, I've just been doing that to pay the bills, and it's been interesting. It's been fun for sure. It's not something that I saw myself doing, but I'm taking it in stride, sort of. And beyond that, well, it was also my birthday on January 16th. And yeah, I turned 29. It's an interesting age to be in because I'm like, oh my gosh, 30 is right there. And I'm feeling a little freaked out about that. But at the same time, I'm like, this is fine. I'm an adult. You know what I mean?
I need to calm down. Everything's fine.
Amanda.
I'm an adult.
Anyway, so yeah. And the day after, I had some friends over and we played some very nerdy D&D. And actually I got to play in a setting which is my world, so that was really fun. And just in general, it was a really good time, you know? And it also kind of helped me to some extent with, you know, making up stories that could take place in this world as well. And potentially things that will make the cut into the final book. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right into some of the things that I've been writing. Oh, and before we get into it, I just want to show you guys something real quick that I was gifted for Christmas, which is one of the most thoughtful gifts I've been given, I think, like ever in my life. And I just want to show you guys real quick here. So this is a cup of coffee with the map that I made in the last video of, you know, the doodle of my world. And as you can see, it's now a coffee cup. And guys, this is like, I'm obsessed with this so hard. My boyfriend made it for me and I'm just like over the moon with it. I use it all the time. It's like my favorite cup and I just love it so much. And I'm gonna take a sip real quick. Oh my God, that's really good coffee. Okay, now let's get into it. We are gonna be picking up during the end of the second age here because, you know, we already talked about the third age on the surface lands, but we haven't talked about the third age from the skylands perspective. So right after the god battle, when when a lot of rocks just started lifting into the sky, becoming into skylands, a lot of people and animals and plants and whatnot kind of were lifted with the rocks, right? Like, because this used to be solid ground. Now it's just all being lifted up. And so it just started lifting up and people, I'm just gonna say they got knocked out. I'm not gonna say why. But at some point, people wake up and they are like, where am I? What is going on? A little bit, you know what I mean? And so they look over the edge and they see just this massive drop, right? Like they can barely make out the bottom almost. I mean, of course they can, but here's the thing. Let's just say that magical things happen that lead to visibility becoming a little bit difficult to properly see, you know, so people can't really make out things that well, which adds to the feeling of vertigo and the feeling of, wow, this is so high up. And a little bit the same goes up But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So people wake up in these islands and they are like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. What is happening right now? And they are scared, of course. But here's the thing. After the release of magic, right, from that allowed the islands to go up, this magic kind of lingered, and it created very, very quickly let's just call it a magical atmosphere, which allowed for people to be able to breathe and to not freeze to death, basically, and not have like hypoxia or something. And so, yeah, at first people are like, what the hell? Okay, we can breathe at least, but what the hell is going on, right? And they're like, help, is anyone here? And they suddenly hear someone like from an island above, like, hey, I'm here, you know what I mean? Like looking downwards to them, like, hey, I am here. And then maybe they see an animal, and basically like people are very in disarray, right? But something else happens with this excess of magic, right? They realize very quickly that the ground they stand on has become extremely fertile. It's almost like you can spit in the ground and something will grow, you know what I mean? Which, allowed for a lot of food for them. There was also another element to this. The same magic started to cause changes to life, basically. So you would start to see, from the food that already existed up there, like plants and fruits and vegetables and whatnot, some mutations started happening where food diversified. So maybe you had a carrot once, but now you have like other different types of carrots as well. So that kind of added to a more rich, like in general, food type thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but you know what I mean. And yeah, so at first people were like really scared, but they were able to feed themselves, and they were like talking to people that were in nearby islands and stuff, trying to organize and whatnot. And with the resources they had, they started building like bridges and ropes and things like that to be able to meet with one another, right? And obviously they at first were like, how do we get down? But of course that was almost impossible for them at the time because the drop was just so large, right? So at first they were just like, we can't really go down yet, so we just gotta like make the most of it. So they started building and trying to live a life there. I mean, due to the food and the climate and everything, people were able to manage it, and they suddenly were like, hey, this isn't so bad, And also, they didn't really know much of what had happened after the battle down there, and because they couldn't quite see what was down there, they kind of started to just fear a little bit the surface lands, because they didn't know if like the evil god had won or what had happened, But they were safe up there. However, as time went on, I mean, they're starting to build villages and little towns and so on and so forth. Civilization is kind of starting up a little there. And then things start to change again. First with mutations. So the magic there, because it was so intense and it was just like permeated through like even the air, some animals, like it started out first with, plants, right? Like, like I said, with a carrot thing and whatnot, but then it kind of jumped over to some animals. And so there were some birds. And these birds started to like grow, right? Like they started growing a lot, and it's almost like their species, like they would have offsprings that would be in other species a little bit, and it was just this like weird mutation galore type thing where life just kind of diversified itself very, very quickly. And these birds, right, they started like growing to a size that people could ride them, right? And they started doing that at first. They were like, okay, yeah, let's try to do this. Now, because of their beliefs, that's why they didn't really go down. At least that's what I'm running with, right? Like remember, this is all subject to change. This is the idea that I have for now. But the point is, they started riding these birds, right? And life was great. But then the jump went onto the people themselves. And so suddenly one day, people started to feel a little bit sick, feel a little bit, under the weather, and they would go to sleep and they wouldn't quite wake up. And people were like, hey, are you there? Like, walking into the rooms, and suddenly they would see that they had grown basically a cocoon around them. And people obviously were like super scared, and they try to bring people out of the cocoons, which sometimes they did it, like whenever people actually were able to see the person and the cocoon hadn't hardened too much, they were able to bring out the person. And usually the person by that stage was fine, and they would basically just grow sick for a little bit, like a couple weeks. They would feel very under the weather, but after that they would be fine. But for the people that actually had their cocoons harden, or that people couldn't reach them because maybe they were in a more isolated island or things like that, what ended up happening was that they started to basically have this metamorphosis within the cocoon, and upon coming out they were no longer human. Now, the idea that I have for now is that either one of two things happened. People came out as a form of, think of these creatures as like moth people a little bit. And the other possibility was that they would come out and be this sort of jellyfish-esque people, right? So suddenly you had these two new species, right? I mean, they were obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but they were sentient, they weren't monsters or anything. They still knew who they were. Their bodies had changed now, and the moth people, for instance, they had wings, so they could fly around and whatnot. And the jellyfish people, they had the most extreme change, because, for instance, their legs would kind of become basically these. Like, I'm still thinking about the design of the creature, but I'm thinking that maybe their legs become much thinner and less, strong. And because of this, they just float. they can they have gases within them that they can release or just take in from the air, and that will allow for them to have buoyancy and to be able to lift themselves up or down. Obviously, these people, the jellyfish people, I mean, yeah, they can float and sort of fly, but they are not as fast as the moth people, for instance. The moth people have much more powerful wings, and they can actually do the thing, you know what I mean? And yeah, so at first people were obviously freaked out, and people were like, what is going on? But they were also these people were someone's brother, someone's friend, someone's mother, whatever, and they kept their memories. And at first people were like, why is this happening? What can we do? But they kind of quite quickly became part of society, and they were just like, okay, I mean, obviously there was a period of time where people were like, okay, this is so weird right now. But with time, it just kind of became a normal thing, right? And so now you had moth people and jellyfish people, and because they could fly, thanks to them, they started, people in general started to expand through these islands upwards and whatnot. And they realized also that there were people already in the higher islands. So all of this was very very new, brave new world type stuff, wow, there's so much to discover. And just like with people, there were other animals as well. And some other animals grew far more than the birds, for instance. So a lot was happening for sure. But then one day, just out of the blue, one of the just comes flying up, right? And this is okay, I was not expecting to see people here. I mean, I kind of did, but not to this extent of wow, you have talents and everything now, and what are these creatures now? What is going on? A little bit. And people were like, oh my god, blah blah blah, And of course, people, I mean, they still remembered the so they were like, please, stay the night type stuff, you know what I mean? So people are being very nice to her and whatnot, and they are like, please help us, we're trying our best here, but we could use some help. Especially because one last thing happened. After all these changes and all these mutations and all these things that were very much making the skylands become their own world, sort of, the magic started to, let's just say, regulate itself, and it wasn't so permeated anymore. It started to find its place and settle, basically. And so, first of all, you couldn't spit anywhere and have something grow, you know what I mean, anymore. But also, atmosphere-wise, there would be times where this perfect atmosphere would falter. And when it did, what ended up happening was, and this is like really cool, I'm really excited about this. Basically, there would be something that I'm calling a void storm for now, or oxygen storm. I'm still figuring it out, what name I might go for. If you guys like one or the other, please let me know in the comments below. But anyway, and what happens when these storms come is, it's basically like the atmosphere in that specific section of the skylands just kind of breaks apart, and the air starts to like thin out, and the temperature starts to drop incredibly fast, right? Like things start to like freeze even, and people can't breathe. And by that point, these storms had already happened maybe like a couple times, and had led to deaths, of course. Thankfully, these storms were very short, like just a couple seconds at first, because there was still a lot of magic in the air. But when the came, and people were like, please help us, because we can't deal with this. And so she was like, okay, yeah, sure, basically. And so she took a plant and added some magic and created these very beautiful, small, green, and kind of glowy plants. And she was like, these will help you out with the whole oxygen thing. As far as the temperature thing, just kind of cover up a little bit, create shelter, And this started to help them, because they really needed the help. So this started helping them with like building shelters that could withstand the sudden temperature drops, and creating basically like ships that could help them move along, between the islands without the need of a bird. And these ships, don't think of them like, cruise ships or like, like a pirate ship or anything like that. They're not. They're more like hot air balloons a little bit. And yeah, like she created this plant, and suddenly people were able to now breathe even during these void storms. And what they did was they created this little like container / terrarium type things, these like spheres with like soil and the plant on top, right? And they would connect that with like a tube to a mask. And so everyone would just carry around their little plant, and they would have their masks on their person at all times. And if at some point something happened, they could just put it on. They also developed, ways of figuring out how to detect when a void storm would come, and they set up these different like systems so that there would be like these bells that began ringing whenever a void storm was coming, and that would give them about like 30 seconds or so of heads up, basically, in which they could run to a shelter or put on their masks and get something warm on or whatever. But yeah, for sure there was like the skylands became a little bit more hazardous, if you will, but still people lived there, and before long she was just like got a dip, basically, for an important reason. Don't get me wrong, but she was like, I need to go, I'm leaving you guys with this, but I cannot stay, I have to go because I'm very and I need to like figure stuff out, basically, so that I don't basically, and so she left, and people were just like, okay, cool, let's continue living our lives, right? And for a while, people still didn't go down. They remained in the skylands. After the left, right, they still didn't really go down to the surface world, and things were good for a while. And they started to grow their economy and learn more about their world and stuff, which I might touch upon later. But then basically these people, the people that were living there, discovered quite quickly that their world was basically like this cylinder that kind of shifted, right? It didn't always remain fixed, right? It sometimes like shifted along with air currents and stuff, but it usually kind of, it never went super far away or anything like that. And some islands had like different weathers, which it would have like, it felt like it didn't make sense, right? Because you would have like maybe a snow-covered island one day, and the next you would have a very like tropical island, and then you would go a little higher and you would have a desert island, and you know, stuff like that. So that was very interesting as well. At least that's the idea that I'm going for right now. But the point is, they realized that there were like levels to this. You know, in order to know where they were and build a map of the world, they added, you know, levels. And so in the first level was where people started building for the first time and stuff, and a great city and a great kingdom came about that. About the same time, people on the second level that weren't aware of the people of the first level also basically did the same, but differently. And their culture was a little rougher, a little more, you know, warrior-esque or brutish, or like it just, life in the second level was a little more dangerous, if you will, and because there weren't as many people, but you know, numbers through time, through the years, raised, and they also made a great sea and a great kingdom. And so we had these two kingdoms, and I think the story of what happens next is something that I will have to leave for the next video. But just as a sneak preview, let's just say that there was someone, a great adventurer, that dared and dared to what? I won't say. You'll have to check the next video for that. There's still a lot of engaging story left, and I really want to keep that for the next video so that this one doesn't become like the longest video ever. And yeah, so I think I'll have to leave it at this for now. But yeah, so far the Skylands are like I'll share something with you guys real quick. Before writing this story, before like even thinking about writing this novel and whatnot, the idea for the Skylands had come into my mind, and that idea is the thing that kind of sparked the whole thing. So for me, the Skylands are, I'm trying to be like, take really good care of it. You know, I'm trying to make sure that it's as awesome as I think it is. And I cannot wait to share more about this. But for now, just, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that the stories and the general vibe that you're getting from this is cool. And yeah, like if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and ring the bell so that you do get notified when I upload again, because otherwise you might miss out on the video. But yeah, just thank you guys so much. Happy New Year. I hope you all are starting your year amazingly. I don't know if that's a word, but you get the vibe. I hope you're all starting the year with like the best vibes. And yeah, I'm hoping to not have another like weeks of no upload. I'm hoping to start uploading weekly again. But yeah, without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one, and hope to see you on the next video. And take care. Bye.